Matt Rife is a comedian who has recently been canceled, by which I mean he got a lot of press for saying harmful trash, he's not sorry, he's still making millions, blah blah blah. Look, we all know that the canceled thing is a joke. Comedy is an extremely safe place for all kinds of abusers and appears to me to be getting worse. One thing that still makes me mad is that the press about this issue lists what Rife said and his non-apology with no judgment call about it, thereby, in effect, helping him say what he said. I won't do that. Words mean things, and these ones are trash. If you want to watch Rife's special, Natural Selection, you can do that on Netflix. I will include a link below, because that's the professional thing to do when critiquing an artist's work using fair use. But I do not condone what he said, as I will make crystal clear. Rife received this brutal cancellation for saying this about a presumably fictional woman he saw working as a server in a restaurant who had a black eye.
I was like, yeah, but I feel like if she could cook, she wouldn't have that black eye.
Why would Rife say something like that? Because it makes him more famous, it earns him more money, and he does not care about any damage it might help to do. This is what we've let stand-up comedy become. Cruelty, profiteering. What damage could what he said do? Well, among other problems, which I haven't flagged because I am myself a walking stack of blind spots, it helps to normalize domestic abuse, normalizes victim blaming, and normalizes a chilling lack of empathy. I'll explain what I mean by normalizing a bit later. Again, I don't think the incident really happened, but it doesn't matter. It's a garbage thing to say regardless. I'm not going to review the rest of Rife's special because after this moment, the rest of the work feels to me like a giant whatabout. If somebody came over to your house, took a dump in the coat closet, but then was pretty friendly for the rest of the time, that good behavior could and should be overshadowed by the closet steamer. It'd be different if Rife were saying, hey, I should have cut that joke, or if Netflix removed it or something, but they aren't doing that. In fact, they are championing it. This moment serves as the tip of the spear in terms of marketing the rest of the special and Rife's career. So clearly, he and Netflix want to be judged on it. Let's talk about a few ways that fans of Cruelty Profiteering will defend Rife, keeping in mind that most of them will not interact with any of this in good faith. They are fans because of the Cruelty Profiteering. They give their money to be part of it. It's why there's a profit to profiteering. Many of them will say that what Rife is doing is a parody. In order for something to be a parody, it has to be exaggerated to the point where someone can recognize that it is a joke. Do you believe that Matt Rife could say what he said to a friend? I mean, he just said it to the whole world, so yeah. Way back in 1988, the Supreme Court delivered a landmark decision in a case called Hustler Magazine v. Falwell. Jerry Falwell was a very famous hyper-Christian megachurch leader. Hustler Magazine was a porn magazine run by Larry Flynt. Hustler ran this parody ad in which they pretended that Falwell confessed that his first sexual experience was with his mother in an outhouse. Falwell sued Hustler Magazine for libel, among other things, and the case went all the way to the top. The Supreme Court decided unanimously, 8-0, missing one justice, that a public figure cannot sue a comedian for libel if what got printed is obviously a joke. There's a movie about this case called The People vs. Larry Flynt with Ed Norton, Woody Harrelson, and Courtney Love, and I've just spoiled the ending, but it's still worth a watch. The court found that no reasonable person would believe that Falwell's first sexual encounter was with his mother, and it probably helped Hustler's case that the ad said in plain English right there that it is an ad parody. But I mean, can you imagine a hyper-religious Christian figure with a checkered sexual... For parody to work, it needs to be clear that it's a joke. It needs to make a point, and the intended audience needs to understand which way the joke is going. Let's talk a little bit about Dave Chappelle. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to agree that Dave has changed. Way back in my day, Dave's comedy was all about race and classism and inequality. And now he's friends with Elon Musk. It's a big turn for Dave Chappelle, but his work influenced me a lot. So I want to talk about pre-Elon Dave, even though I'm bewildered by post-Elon trans jokes and maybe anti-Semitic Dave. 20 years ago, Dave Chappelle had a sketch show called Chappelle Show. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. It was so popular that by the third season, the network was backing up trucks of money to dump on Dave Chappelle to keep making the show. But when Dave saw those trucks backing up, he left. He left all those millions on the table, even left the country, and everyone thought he was insane. Now keep in mind, this is pre-Elon Musk, pre-anti-trans Dave, a very different time. But seriously, Everybody thought that he must have had a psychotic break. When he finally reappeared, he made very few appearances to talk about it, but he did go on Oprah to explain why he left. This is what he said.
So then when I'm on the set and we're finally taping the sketch, somebody on the set that was white laughed in such a way. I know the difference of people laughing with me and people laughing at me. And it was the first time I'd ever gotten a laugh that I was uncomfortable with.
That's a man who realized that not everyone who was laughing with him about racism was laughing in the same way he intended. That's what we mean when we say that comedy is subjective. It doesn't just mean that some people laugh at this and some people laugh at that. It means that if you say certain things and people laugh in a certain way, you could realize that you are pushing for something that you are against. An ethical person needs to keep that in their minds, lest they advocate for, whether they mean to or want to or not, things that are inherently bad, like domestic abuse. Matt Rife has not had that thought yet, or if he has, he's making the opposite decision to pre-Elon Dave and choosing to be a cruelty profiteer. Let's talk about normalizing. Here's what it means to me, keeping in mind that I hold no degrees in this field. If you're the kind of person who has inflicted domestic violence on a partner and you're teetering over whether to get help for yourself or apologize or just explain it away, you can make your way through Rife's joke with the impression that the situation is kind of funny. If you're a victim of domestic abuse, imagining how hard it's going to be to leave an abusive partner, this could be the moment that stops you reaching out for help because, hey, it happens to lots of folks and they go on with their lives, etc. Even if you forget all that and agree that Rife is only mentioning domestic abuse ironically, no performer can control how their intended irony is perceived. That's another facet of the subjectivity Dave Chappelle referenced.
But what I didn't consider is how many people watch a show and how the way people use television is subjective.
We've seen this happen a million times since the inception of the internet. A group has ironic jokes or beliefs. Everyone understands they're not intended to be serious, but then the ironic part gets forgotten, and people who legitimately hold those beliefs remain. This irony poisoning happened to punk rock in the 80s. Punks played around with fascist imagery for the shock value, and next thing you know, actual Nazis are showing up to the clubs. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that laughing at Matt Rife's cruelty profiteering is the same as being a Nazi skinhead, but for every person who will defend Rife by saying, look, I'm only laughing at this ironically, there's at least one who is enjoying it at face value. To be in the first group is to passively enable the second. It's like if someone lived in a country with huge systemic problems with racism, and that person's take on it was, hey, I'm not involved with the systemic racism, I just got here. I just want to sing along with some songs.
Just want to sing along to some songs, you know what I mean?
You know the word he wants to say. We all do. You can feel all these guys gunning for it. Think of the press they'd get if they just said it right. Won't that be a great cultural achievement? This is not an indictment of irony, but of the money-making practice of ironically flirting with racism, fascism, domestic abuse, etc. Because even if you're playing with the garbage ironically, the garbage still stinks, and the stink still gets on you. Some people might be tempted to defend Rife by saying that artists should take risks, that he said this to push boundaries and challenge norms, but what Rife is doing is not a risk, it's a formula. Rife is following tracks laid for him by Segura, Trump, Alex Jones, etc. Now, not all these people are comedians, but they've all made huge careers by saying the worst things they can think of. It's a formula. In fact, Rife is following Segura's lead almost to the letter. Here's how Segura started his special, Sledgehammer, 6 months ago.
Let me ask you guys something, man. Are they gonna keep taking our Confederate statues down, or what? I'm just taking the temperature of the room. I don't know who's here, you know?
Have that black eye. So, testing the waters, seeing if y'all are gonna be fun or not.
It's not a risk, it's a formula. Cruelty profiteering like this is, at this point, an extremely well-trodden path, whereas a path to fame and fortune as a comedian who is generally kind to people is less clear. Jim Gaffigan comes to mind, but then he's been around a long time. Maybe he's the last big-time pro-American comedian who is alive and performing, but not being cruel to trans people or flirting with domestic abuse. Now, when I started doing comedy, you would hear edgelordy jokes like this from new comics because being shocking is easier than being funny. You'll still see that at open mics, but eventually, as people grow as artists, they realize they can be better comics without being edgelords. But now, established millionaire comedians are circling around to edgelordism because of the social media travel and profit. Physical and emotional abuse are so damaging to the people who suffer it that even someone who hasn't been in that situation knows it's not something you laugh off. Rife doesn't care about that. He wants the money and the press. Netflix doesn't care. They want the money and the press. Who can stop this cycle? Only you and me together. As long as people are spending as much time as they do on socials, and as long as the streamers are run by people who care about shareholders first and art never, we will see this form of work continue to rise. This will go on until regular people just don't watch. And there are also no brakes on this system imposed by the media. Shares, clicks, money. You've seen how a lot of outlets handle cruelty in politics. They treat all politicians the same, even if one is saying that we should build more bridges and the other one just G.G. Allen the microphone. The power to do something about this cruelty profiteering is, as always, with us, you and me. And the only incentive, really, is because we want to treat others with basic humanity. So how do we do that? Now, although I started this channel to talk about stuff like this cruelty profiteering in the specific, I don't think the remedy for it can be specific. Trying to cancel someone is never going to work. There's just too much social media engagement to be had, too much money to be made, very little incentive to call it out. But what we can do is agree that good comedy includes decency. We can advocate for that decency among friends, fellow writers, fellow comics. We can let people know when a joke isn't cool. That's where real stuff can happen between real people in life who have real relationships. So what happened to Matt Rife? Well, he traded his decency for money. Could that happen to you or me? Absolutely. Dave Chappelle outlines how it happened to him in that same Oprah interview, and Rife is living it right now too. With that much money on the table, he's pretty much guaranteed to have people around him all day telling him that the money is proof that he's doing the right thing. People will comment on this video that Rife's success is proof that he's right to say what he said. It's not true. It goes against basic human ethics, but they'll say it. Whatever else we do in life, we should endeavor to be decent, and we should accept that we often fail at it. And you might someday have the opportunity to do big projects and show people what you're capable of. Don't let the money and the pressure convince you that your material isn't enough, that you need to add some viral shock moment. You don't.
Just be a decent fucking human being. Is that too much to ask?
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, and maybe jump on the Patreon if you want to help me make more. And if you want to talk about comedy writing with people who are trying to do it in a constructive way, we also have a Discord channel.